I know whenever we talk about Northern Ireland, whenever we talk about protocols or frameworks, a lot of you just look on misty-eyed and think, what the blimmin' heck is this all about? And yes, of course, we get the Prime Minister telling us it's all going to be marvellous. Well, we're going to try in the next few minutes to explain this to you, why it matters, not just for Northern Ireland, but potentially for the whole country. I worry that today's the day Euroscepticism died in the Conservative Party. Well, who better than Martin Howe KC, co-author of the ERG report that Marc Francois announced to the world yesterday. Martin, we were told by Rishi Sunak this would mean that trade between the mainland and Northern Ireland would now be unimpeded. Is that correct?
No, it is not correct. The problem is that if you go by the government message, you often find there's a gap between the government spin on agreements with the EU and the reality of what's in the legal texts. And we've been spending the last 3 weeks going through those with a fine-tooth comb. There will not be unimpeded trade at all. There will be some facilitations of trade which benefit supermarkets, for example, but they have to register. They have to register their warehouse in Great Britain. They have to register their branches in Northern Ireland on the list.
And all of this to trade within the United Kingdom?
That is all to trade within the United Kingdom.
Right. So that, yes, that was a big Sunak spin that clearly isn't right. But it's OK, because there's a break. There's going to be a break, a Windsor break, and any EU legislation that we don't like, we can simply veto. That's what we were told.
Yeah, the problem with that break is that it's a much, much more restricted version of a break which Norway and the EFTA countries have enjoyed under the European Economic Area Agreement. They have only used it once. Norway used it once in 2011. They abandoned it in 2013 when they blocked the adoption of a post office directive, which they felt strongly against that the EU had adopted. But they abandoned it because the EU can retaliate if you use it. So the Stormont break, I think, is a complete distraction. It's very difficult to use in theory, even in theory, and in practice, it's unlikely ever to be used.
So that means that as the EU makes more law for its single market, that law will be applied to Northern Ireland.
Exactly. But it's more...
So to legal purposes, they're still virtually part of the European Union?
Yes, indeed. All purposes to do with goods trade, goods manufacture, customs, and other features, state aid, very important. They're locked into the system. But the thing about this arrangement, the Windsor deal, it's said to be removing some European Union law from Northern Ireland. In fact, that one claim by the government is, I think, only 3% is left. That is completely untrue, absolutely untrue. 100% of European Union law under the protocol remains applying to businesses in Northern Ireland.
All of this, should be damaging our trust and faith in the Prime Minister, shouldn't it?
Well, what I'm talking about is what objectively is in the legal text and comparing it with these statements.
Rather than making political comments.
I don't want to get into...
I was just trying to get you in trouble, that was all. But on the bigger picture being not just Northern Ireland, but if Northern Ireland keeps having to accept new EU law, doesn't that make it more difficult for the rest of the United Kingdom to get rid of EU laws, because there becomes a gap between legislation and regulation within our own country that could become enormous? So in a sense, could it not be that this Windsor framework in some ways is tying us closer to EU law?
Well, yes, because when I last came to speak to you, it was about the retained EU law bill, which allows a lot of this EU law to be reformed.
Which I was excited about.
Indeed, but in Great Britain.
Yeah.
But it doesn't allow it to be reformed in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
So as that process goes through, there will be divergences between laws in Northern Ireland and laws in Great Britain. And that causes pressures like, for example, there was an example last week. Parliament has banned the importation of trophy animals. I mean, you may not agree with that because obviously you go tiger hunting from the back of elephants and you like to bring your tiger heads home.
My enemies would all think that, yes.
But you know, that is the law that Parliament has decided upon, to ban the importation.
Yeah.
They can't do that in Northern Ireland because it's not an EU law. And what's more, because if we imposed restrictions on goods from Northern Ireland into Great Britain, that would even further damage Northern Ireland businesses. They can't stop the trophies coming in to Great Britain from Northern Ireland.
Will the retained EU law bill still go through? Will we actually get rid of many, many thousands of EU laws?
Right, well, there are two questions there. One is, will it go through? And it's being faced, there's opposition in the House of Lords. So it depends on the determination of the government to push it through and, if necessary, play ping-pong between the Commons and the Lords to get it done. Well, what will it achieve? I mean, my concern about it is there's got to be political will in really going through these laws and deciding, you know, this is not something we ever wanted, we don't want it anymore, and not just a sort of tick box exercise where the civil service say, oh, Minister, it's far too difficult to do this, let's just keep the same EU law.
Well,